All right, so we are 8 weeks into a series. 8 weeks into a series means that we've covered a lot of weeks so far. Today, we're talking about the joy of celebration, but the series itself is called This is War, and it's intended to awaken us to the reality of spiritual warfare around us. And so how do we fight in these sorts of things? And so that's what we've been spending a lot of time talking about, and each week we've used one of C.S. Lewis's greatest works, in my opinion, called the Screwtape Letters. And we've used the Screwtape Letters to help us navigate into these difficult waters because Lewis did it quite so masterfully. And so if you're not familiar with the Screwtape Letters, let me give you like a 30,000-foot view. And if you want to go check it out on your own, I would encourage you to go ahead and do that. But I also would encourage you that if you do it, do not consume Screwtape Letters like you consume other books. One letter and then chase it with a psalm or chase it with something good or something bright, and because it can kind of spiral you into a weird spot. So just go one at a time, take your time. It's not a race. So in Screwtape Letters, this senior demon named Screwtape writes instructional letters to his nephew and junior tempter named Wormwood. And he teaches him how to tempt and corrupt the ordinary British man that they call the patient. And this patient has recently become a Christian, and the goal is to prevent the patient from growing in his faith so that they can drag his soul to hell. And the entire book is written from the demon's point of view, and it reveals how everyday temptations work, not usually through dramatic, evil, crazy thoughts, but generally it happens through subtle distractions, selfishness, pride, materialism, and some sort of spiritual complacency. Lewis, he masterfully explores the realities of spiritual warfare, of prayer, of church life, of love, sex, war, and ordinary human weaknesses. So as you read these different letters, you begin to discover what genuine Christian faithfulness looks like, and it's the opposite of what these guys are trying to accomplish. Lewis somehow presents this demonic correspondence as found, and he never gives us any explanation as to how he comes up with it. We recognize demons are fallen angels, not equals, but perverted beings who abuse free will. He puts out a caution: denial of evil or excessive fascination of evil are equally as bad. So Lewis reminds the readers that Screwtape is a liar, so not everything in the letters should be considered truthful. This work is satirical exploration of real spiritual warfare, with the general tone being that evil thrives when we ignore it or when we fixate on it wrongly. And so with all of that, let's talk about letter 16. In letter 16, Screwtape is alarmed to learn that the patient has been faithfully attending the same church that's near his house since he was converted. And so Screwtape's not pleased about that. He doesn't go as far as seeing this as a total failure, though, because he views consistent loyalty to one local church as dangerous unless it's rooted in indifference. You catch that? So the bad guy says that going to one church is okay if we can get you to be indifferent while you're there. What we should do, though, is get you to bounce around from church to church. So his strategy for Wormwood: if you can't stop the patient from going to church altogether, turn him into a connoisseur or a taster of churches. Encourage him to shop around the neighborhood for the one that perfectly suits him. Judge the services, judge the sermons, judge the music and the people, all by your personal tastes. And this transforms him from being a humble pupil into a critical consumer. Don't raise your hands. Have you met a critical consumer in churches? Why? Why does he want to do this? Because it undermines the local parish, which can unite diverse people in the kind of unity that the enemy desires. And for Screwtape and Wormwood, the enemy is God. And so if you keep the patient focused as a critical consumers, church can become clubs of like-minded people. Tiny little echo chambers. They get distracted from the real goal, and they focus on what they want to hear. And doing this will foster criticism, and pride and dissatisfaction grows in the patient's heart, all the while expelling the humble learning and submission that the church is trying to put forward. So the truth is faithful commitment to the local church serves to strengthen believers in spiritual warfare. Oh. Here's a quote from letter 16. Surely you know that if a man can't be cured of church going, the next best thing is to send him all over the neighborhood looking for the church that suits him until he becomes a taster or connoisseur of churches. What we're trying to do in this series is become people who know what warfare looks like and become people who are familiar with the schemes of the enemy so that we can stand up against them. So here's the fastest 7-week recap that you've ever heard. We talked about being familiar with his schemes and how do we overcome. The first thing we need to do is live holy lives. We need to be awake to the reality of warfare around us, recognizing evil is a real problem. The flesh is a tool, and how do we fight that enemy of ours that is us? The practical weapon was praying scripture. The theological weapon is the Holy Spirit. And last week we said we as a church is greater than I. And I know all you grammar nerds don't like that, but I did it on purpose. So we is greater than I. And so today we want to talk about celebration and joy. Celebration and joy. These are two weapons in the reality of spiritual warfare. So play a game with me because I want to play a game. I want you to smile on the count of 3 until I say stop. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Smile. Everybody smile. It's an all skate. I see frowns. You know, this is the happiest it's been up here for me because I don't know if you know this, but sometimes up here it looks like I killed all of your dogs. I have never killed your dogs, but sometimes your faces up here would make me think I killed your dog. And what are you noticing that as you're sitting there smiling? You're starting to feel something, aren't you? And you're part of the trickery. Because all I did was tell you, now you can stop smiling. Keep smiling if you want to, but don't hold it any longer, because Simon says it's over. Wouldn't you love to live life with this as your default setting? That no matter how bad you have it, you recognize someone has it worse. And you also recognize that just because someone has it worse doesn't mean you have it good. So how do we bridge the gap? How do we get from the sadness of our circumstances to the joy of our salvation? The truth is, I don't think there's a simple cookie cutter for this. Like, I think a lot of times we want checklists, and if I do these things, then this will work. And I just don't see that for celebration and joy. But what we want to do is, in the text today, we want to see reasons to call out celebration. Do you remember how loud the applause was for the 2 baptisms at Seaver Lake in September, if you were there? Do you remember how just awesome the celebration of that was? If you weren't here, it's okay, we'll do it again. That needs to be our reality. We are a people who celebrate and who live with joy. So if you were here, if you were there, how did that make you feel? Kind of better than that smile that I made you put on your face. It's weird, though. You're forced to smile, and then all of a sudden you kind of feel a little happy. Like, stop tricking myself. But that celebration of baptism, it does something in our soul. So we're going to look at Luke 15. If those of you who did last week's homework and read Luke 15, high fives all around. Those of you who forgot, high five still, it's fine. I probably would have forgot if I didn't have an important reason not to. So we're going to read Luke 15, Black Bible that's around you. It's on page 868. 868. We're going to do all of the text in Luke 15 today. And so we're going to go a little bit faster so that we get through in a way that's respectful of your time. So before we jump in, I want you to know that as we read the text, you're not allowed to disengage. You can unplug from everything I said. Everything I say, it's fine. But I'm going to read the sufficient words of God. When I read the word of God, you're responsible for what it says. And so you have to engage at this spot. You can ignore me for the rest of it. I'd be kind of hard to ignore because I'm loud. But you can't. Luke 15, starting at verse 1. Tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. This made the Pharisees and teachers of religious law complain that he was associating with such sinful people and eating with them. So Jesus told them this story. And so I know I said we're going to read it all, and we will, but we're going to get there. I need you just to understand something. Remember, context is key. Context is key. A lot of people say you can make the Bible say whatever you want it to say, and that's true. You just can't make it mean whatever you want it to mean. You can come across texts that you think say one super weird thing. It means what it meant. And so we've got to, before we get the rest of these three parables that Jesus is going to tell, we have to just be a little bit over the top in nailing down this context. So Jesus is talking with Pharisees and experts in the religious law. If you're not reading in the NLT, it might say scribes, which is an expert in religious law. And so the NLT just does the extra translation for you, tells you who these people are. So Pharisees and scribes, and they're complaining that he, and this he being Jesus, this dude associates with tax collectors and other notorious sinners, and he eats with them. So what follows is addressed to Pharisees and scribes, Pharisees and teachers of the religious law. And so we're going to look at what lesson might be in here for us as well, but we have to hold on to the context. He's talking to Pharisees and teachers of religious law. So verse 4 and 5. If a man has 100 sheep and one of them gets lost, what will he do? Will he leave the 99 others in the wilderness to go search for the one that's lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he will joyfully carry it home on his shoulders. Did I not put? I didn't put the second verse in there. When he, 15, 6, okay. When he arrives, he will call together his friends and neighbors, saying, "Rejoice with me, because I have found my lost sheep." In the same way, there is more joy in heaven over one lost sinner who repents and returns to God than over 99 others who are righteous and haven't strayed away. So a shepherd with 100 sheep is a dude of modest means, at best. And it says he would leave, which is an accurate translation. He would leave those sheep, but it's not quite strong enough. It doesn't invoke quite the emotion that the text is trying to get out of us. He would desert those 99. Because what Jesus is trying to show to the Pharisees and the scribes is that the pursuit of the sinner is a priority. Even though others in the church, the found ones, are doing well, the pursuit is a priority. And then when the lost is found, we celebrate. All right, so hold on again. Remember, teachers of religious law, scribes, and Pharisees. They're frustrated. Jesus is talking to tax collectors, notorious sinners, and has meals with them. And so here's the second story Jesus says. This is chapter 15, verses 8 through 10. Suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Won't she light a lamp and sweep the entire house and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she will call her friends and neighbors and say, "Rejoice with me, because I found my lost coin." In the same way, there is joy in the presence of God's angels when even one sinner repents. So this coin is probably a coin that's worth a day's wages. So it's worth going to find. The pursuit of the sinner is the priority, even though others in the church are doing well. Then, when what is lost is found, you celebrate. That's the same thing that happened with the sheep, right? The same exact thing. So something is going on. Jesus is building to something. So let's remember the point. Let's remember context and hold on to it. Pursuit of the lost, joyful celebration when it's found. Talking to who? Pharisees and teachers of religious law, experts in religious law, the scribes. Because they're annoyed that Jesus talks with tax collectors, other sinners, and those sorts of things. And he has meals with those who are lost. So before we read the lost son, I have to get you to disconnect something, okay? Most people in this room, I would say, have heard this parable before. That was difficult. And I want to tell you that if you've heard this before, you are at a disadvantage. Because we want to grab the context well. And so many of these stories that we've heard 30 and 40 times, I mean, we got Marvin back there who spent, 40 years in ministry, something like that. He's probably preached this sermon like 16, 17 times. He's been through this text. We're at a disadvantage sometimes because we know the end. In this conversation, no one knew the end. No one knew what Jesus was about to say. And turns out Jesus said a lot of wild stuff. So even those that thought they could predict were going to be wrong. So here we go. Let's just suspend our reality for a hot second. And you are a Pharisee or a scribe. See, I bet you didn't want to be a Pharisee in church. So you're going to be a Pharisee or a scribe. And you're surrounding this teacher. Because you're trained in the business of the church. And you know what it takes to fully please Yahweh. But if you're honest with yourself, there are 400 years of silence that are really confusing to you. Because you've built the system that says this is what God wants, and we know exactly how to do it. And it's the cosmic vending machine, God, and we put just the right coins in, and we press just the right buttons, and we get just the right results, and you know all of it. You're the nerd that programmed the vending machine. And so your thought is, let's trap this teacher who you think is a false teacher. Let's give him another gotcha moment. Because the ones we keep trying to get him with, they don't work. So you present your case to him, and he begins with story time. And the first two stories you understand. Pursuit of the lost, celebration of what's found. So you're thinking to yourself, is he seriously going to do this again? Now, just for a moment, until we get to like some closing thoughts, you just have to hold on. You're just going to be a Pharisee or a scribe for just a second. Just okay. You don't know how this is going to end. So you need to be at the edge of your seat. To illustrate this point further, Jesus told them this story. A man had two sons. The younger son told his father, I want my share of the estate now before you die. So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. A few days later, this younger son packed all his belongings and moved to a distant land where he wasted his money in wild living. About the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land and he began to starve. He persuaded the local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into his fields to feed pigs. The young man became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him, but no one gave him anything. When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, at home, even the hired servants have have food enough to spare, and here I am dying of hunger. I'll go home to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and I've sinned against you, and I'm no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a hired servant. So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming, filled with love and compassion, and he ran to his son and embraced his son and kissed him. And his son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and you, and I'm no longer worthy of being called your son. But his father said to the servants, quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet, and kill the calf we've been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast. For this son of mine who was dead has now returned to life. He was lost, but now he is found. And so the party began. Meanwhile, the older son was in the fields working. He returned home. He heard the music and dancing in the house, and he asked one of the servants what was going on. Your brother is back, he was told, and your father has killed the fatted calf. We are celebrating because of his safe return. The older brother was angry and wouldn't go in. His father came out and begged him, but he replied, all these years I've slaved for you, never once refused to do a single thing you told me to. And in all that time, you never gave me even one young goat for a feast with my friends. Yet when this son of yours comes back, after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf. His father said to him, look, dear son, you have always stayed by me, and everything I have is yours. We had to celebrate this day, for your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, but now he's found. Okay, you can stop being Pharisees and scribes. I want you to imagine for a second that you got a new job. And whatever physical limitations you have, you're still able to do this new job because accommodations are being made for you. Your job is to pick up trash at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. And you take pride in this job, but it is seriously challenging. Why? Because 100,000 people visit the National Mall every day. Northeast Missouri, that's a lot of folks. We are a town of 279, probably 50 people in the room, somewhere about there. 100,000 is exponentially more than we can fit in our building. Right? Like we feel crowded around 100. So this is your job, and you take pride in it. Because in your job, you get to see the National Mall every day. And the days that you're assigned to the Washington Monument, you have the best view. Because when you look north, you see the White House. And when you look south, you see Jefferson. And when you look west, you see World War II reflecting pool Lincoln. When you look east, you see the Capitol building. You can see everything from right around the Washington Monument. It's such a good day. And so you're picking up trash. But now you've been doing this job for 3 years. And you are still getting all of that trash picked up because that's the job. But in your mind, the job description has changed. Now, instead of keeping the mall beautiful, you're indignant at the 100,000 people who come through and drop trash either on purpose or on accident. And you're not doing the task anymore. You're still doing the task, but you're super annoyed at everyone you see. Welcome to being a Pharisee. Welcome to being a Pharisee. That's the posture that Pharisees and scribes had. Still doing the task, but completely having lost the heart behind it. If we're not intentional, church, we can grab that posture as a church too and get focused on doing the tasks and losing the heart behind it all. See, we might think that what happens on Sunday is the most important part of our Christian life. The truth is, the application of Sunday, Monday through Saturday, is far more important. And if you're not going to show up and get topped off, right? We've talked about that before. I can't fill your spiritual tank. It's not my job description. You need to come with most of the cake already built, and I'll put icing on it, right? And if your cake is made of cardboard and tastes gross, but it has good icing on it, that's not my fault. And if your cake is made by Sarah, it's going to taste good. And so you've spent the week building this cake, and all I got to do is put the frosting on it. We're good. But if you think I can build the whole thing in the 30 minutes or however long I go on a Sunday morning, you are going to be starving in your spiritual life. Because you have to take this little bit that I give you and carry it through your week, Monday through Saturday. Otherwise, it becomes so easy to focus on the wrong things on Sunday. And we begin to slip into what Lewis warned about. We're still doing most of the things that a good Christian should do. And I don't know that I would say we've become evil when we slip into that, but we've realigned our hearts accidentally to secondary things, and we miss pursuit and celebration. And if we don't connect ourselves with God, and if we're not regularly rejoicing, we can find ourselves with the posture of the other son, with the posture of the Pharisee, with the posture of the dude cleaning the National Mall, who after 3 years hates everybody he sees. It's so wild how easily this happens. When I was managing Casey's like years ago, I would interview people, and in the interview process, I would tell them, your responsibility when you find a mess is to clean it. I don't care what the mess is, I don't care where the mess is, and I want to tell you that people do nasty things in bathrooms. If you can't handle that, you need to tell me now, because your job description is not changing. But after you go for a while, we can become numb. We can fall into the pattern of the Pharisees and scribes. We can fall into the pattern of the groundskeeper who hates being the groundskeeper. All right, so let's dig in a little bit on the text, and then we'll pray. And verse 28. We're just going to walk through just this little bit. Now, there's a lot of really cool stuff that's happened in this chapter already. Really fun things that we could talk about. We're not going to. Read the chapter, grab a study Bible, do your work. We're just going to get these last handful of verses. The older brother, who had been working, was angry and would not go into the celebration because he found out what? What did he find out? It's my brother. That dude I'm so frustrated with. So his father came out and he begged him, come on, let's go inside. And the other brother replied, all these years I've slaved for you. Never once refused to do a single thing you told me to. And in all that time, you never gave me even one young goat for a feast with my friends. Yet when this son of yours, and I said it that way on purpose, when this son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf. Dad, I never stopped doing the job. I never stopped checking the boxes. But in the process, he lost the beauty all around him. He's cleaning the National Mall, indignant that people are dropping things. I don't know, how many of you have been out in public? Thanks. 6 or 7. Okay. How many of you, while out in public, have dropped something that you didn't realize you dropped until you got home? Now, let's say it was a Reese's wrapper, right? Because those are fantastic. Actually, we need to go full send. It's either a Reese's Fast Break or a York Peppermint Patty. You pick. And you drop the wrapper. You get the whole way home, and because there was no trash can, you put it in your pocket, but it fell out. You get the whole way home. Now what? Is there one person in this room who would get in the car, go back to Thousand Hills, go find the wrapper and pick it up? Probably. I have an idea of who it would be too, but I'm not going to say that. It's easy to become indignant when we never look at other people's stories. So he says, this son of yours. It's a phrase that is meant to show contempt. You are celebrating, but where's mine? In this, Jesus is showing that his heart has aligned with the Pharisees, with the scribe, with groundskeeper Willie, with all these guys. And in all that time, he says, you never gave me even one young goat for a feast with my friends. You never even gave me one young goat for a feast with my friends. Father, I would have liked to celebrate. I see joy and celebration going on in there. I want joy and celebration, and I have certainly earned it. His father says, look, dear son, you have always stayed with me, and everything I have is yours. Son, everything I have is everything. Everything I have is yours. The reason you're not celebrating is you. I've given you everything already. If you're not celebrating, it's because you haven't thrown the party. Everything I have is yours. Church, we are to pursue the lost. We're to celebrate when they're found. And in that celebration, we become people of joy. And then the world looks at us and sees this joyful hope that we have, and they wonder where it comes from. Church, the Father has given us everything we need for celebration. Everything we need for celebration. Let's not become like the patient who got stuck on secondary issues. Well, I would go back to that church, but you see, that pastor wore black and gray. It was too loud. It was too quiet. That's only said by people who have no idea how hard it is to get the sound right. You didn't sing the song I like. You sung too many songs I didn't like. You played that bridge one too many times. Spent too much time in prayer. You read the Bible for too long. I wish I'd never heard these things. He doesn't preach from the Bible. That was one that was accused of me because I didn't hold this the whole time I preach. We get stuck on secondary issues. And we become Pharisees. We become scribes. We become the indignant groundskeeper Willie. And you hate your job because you lost the beauty. You realize the groundskeeper, he's still at the same place every day. He still sees the same stuff. His heart posture's just changed. So, church, we cannot become the older brother, or the other brother. So lost in the tasks that we're not full of joy and celebration. So here we are. The point of the stories is to take the posture of the Father who runs to the lost. The second the Pharisees heard that, they were like, no. He wept on him. In Greek, he hung on his neck and kissed him. Nope, not doing that either. Take the posture of the Father, run to the lost, being responsible enough that with what God has given us, with what we've already got, celebration is possible. So we can celebrate when the lost is found, and we can be full of joy, and that, church, is how we fight. So we have to do this together. This is why we are together. You are so much easier to pick off by yourself than when you're in the church. And so we need to celebrate together. We need to worship together. We need the joy and the experience that we have to be contagious. Be as contagious as the smile on your face, even when you don't feel like smiling. Because I know you know that if you smile, you can reset your mood. That's the point of the parables. Go get the lost. Celebrate when they're found. And that celebration births in our hearts this joy that becomes so contagious. Then the passage in Peter, when it talks about always be prepared to give a reason for the hope that you have, people will actually see we are a people of hope. We're full of joy. We're full of celebration. We're going to close a little bit different this morning. If you were with us years and years ago, we always close with a song. Today we're going to close with a song too. Because I think this is super fitting for our service. Now, as we close, in a second, now I'm not going to ask you yet, but in a second I'm going to ask you to stand. And here's what I'm going to need. I'm going to need to hear you. Some of us will sing fantastically, and some of us will make joyful noises. I want to be very just transparent. I love being in the crowd for worship, and I love hearing someone in the crowd singing their heart out to a different tune in a different key. I love it. Everything that hinders you this morning, set it aside. In a moment, we'll stand and we'll sing together. There's joy in the house of the Lord. We better actually do this thing we're singing about. And then it says, and we won't be silent. That's how I want us to close. That's the posture that we need. That is how we'll actually defeat the enemy. Or we can keep being in the ring with Mike Tyson taking blows to the face. I don't know how many you can take. Not many on my part. The enemy wants to take you out. You understand that, right? You are hated. And if he can get just this little sliver of you to start focusing on the wrong thing, man, he's got you. So let's reset. Let's reset and let's stand and sing House of the Lord.